You know, Alex, I spent the better part of yesterday afternoon wrestling with a 6-inch spiral wound hose that had all the structural integrity of an angry python. I was trying to hook up my new jointer, and by the time I got the cuff on, I'd lost 3 knuckles and most of my dignity.
Only 3 knuckles? You're getting soft in your old age, Tiger. Usually, your simple shop upgrades involve at least one minor emergency room visit or a very colorful conversation with the local hardware store clerk.
Well, the clerk at the electrical supply counter already thinks I'm a lunatic because I keep coming back for more 10-gauge wire. But seriously, we're diving into the nervous system of the shop today: wiring and dust collection. It's the stuff that isn't sexy like a hand-cut dovetail, but if you don't get it right, your lungs feel like they've been lined with 80 grit sandpaper, and your circuit breakers start playing a rhythm section every time you turn on the table saw.
It really is the unglamorous essential, isn't it? Most people want to talk about which Japanese pull saw has the coolest handle, not whether they should be running a 240-volt dedicated line for their Cyclone. But I've seen your shop, Tiger. It's cleaner than my kitchen. How much of that is luck and how much is actually having a system that doesn't require me to flip 5 switches just to sand a coaster?
It's zero luck and about 100 hours of squinting at CFM charts. Look, the biggest hurdle for most folks is realizing that a shop vac and a 5-gallon bucket is just a polite suggestion for dust. If you're pushing a board through a thickness planer, that machine is basically a wood chip cannon. It's launching a gallon of waste every few seconds. If your vacuum can't swallow it faster than the machine spits it out, you're just decorating your floor with trip hazards.
Okay, let's start there. Because the Rockler guys always talk about CFM, cubic feet per minute. For those of us who didn't spend our youth studying fluid dynamics, what's the real-world version of that? How do I know if my collector is actually sucking or just making a lot of noise?
Think of it like a straw. If you're drinking a milkshake through a tiny coffee stirrer, you're going to turn purple before you get a drop. That's your shop vac trying to clear a table saw. You need a bigger straw, a 4-inch or even 6-inch duct. Most tools need between 400 and 800 CFM at the tool to actually keep the air clear. But here's the kicker. The longer your hose is and the more elbows and bends you put in it, the more friction you're adding. It's like trying to run a marathon through a bouncy castle. You're going to lose steam.
A marathon through a bouncy castle. I'm picturing you in neon spandex now. So if I have a small garage shop, am I better off with a single stage unit, those ones with the bag on top? Or do I really need to go full industrial Cyclone like the Clearview setup we saw in that Johnny Brook video?
Go 2-stage if you can swing it. Your lungs will thank you in 20 years. A single stage unit takes all that fine, nasty, flour-like dust and shoves it right through the impeller and into a bag. Half the time, the bag acts like a giant pepper shaker, leaking the finest, most dangerous dust back into the air you're breathing. A 2-stage Cyclone, like that CV1800, uses centrifugal force to drop the heavy stuff into a bin first. Only the microscopic ghosts make it to the filter. It keeps your suction consistent because the filter isn't getting choked out every 10 minutes.
We should probably touch on why that ghost dust is actually terrifying. People think, oh, it's just wood, it's natural. But some of these exotic woods are basically chemical weapons in powder form, right?
Exactly. You get some cocobolo or black walnut dust in your lungs, and your body reacts like you've inhaled a beehive. It's an irritant, it's an allergen, and over time, it's a one-way ticket to respiratory issues. I knew a guy who ignored it for years, and now he can't walk up a flight of stairs without sounding like a broken bellows. That's why we talk about collection at the source. If the dust gets into the air where you can see it in a sunbeam, you've already lost the battle.
Which leads us to the big automation dream. I watched that Rings Workshop video you sent over, and my brain almost melted. They have blast gates that open magically when the tool turns on. Is that just over-engineering for the sake of cool YouTube videos, or is there a practical reason to automate your gates?
Oh, it's a total game changer. I'm the king of forgetting to open a blast gate. I'll turn on the planer, start a pass, and then wonder why the room is suddenly filled with a blizzard of pine chips. It's because I'm lazy and my brain is usually 3 steps ahead on the assembly. With something like the IVAC system or those automated gates, the moment you flip the switch on your saw, a little sensor feels the electricity moving and says, hey, wake up. It opens the gate, kicks the collector on, and you just work. It removes the friction of being a craftsman.
But that sounds like a wiring nightmare. I can barely manage a power strip without it looking like a nest of copper snakes. How do you actually wire a shop for that without burning the place down?
Wiring is where most people get the shakes, but it's just logic with consequences. The key is separation of powers. You can't run a 3 horsepower dust collector and a 3 horsepower cabinet saw on the same 15 amp circuit. You'll trip that breaker faster than a kid on a shoelace. You need dedicated circuits.
So if I'm setting up a shop from scratch, you're saying I need, what, one circuit for the suck and one for the cut?
At a minimum, I tell folks to run 240 volt lines for the big boys. A 240V dust collector runs cooler and more efficiently. Then you use a Pro switch that can handle the load. The cool thing about those IVAC Pro Tool Plus sensors is that they just clip onto the power cord of your tool. You don't even have to open the motor housing. It's like a little stethoscope for electricity. When it hears the tool humming, it sends a wireless signal to the main hub.
Wait, wireless? So I don't have to run miles of low voltage wire all over my rafters? Because that sounds like the kind of chore I would start in January and still be doing by next August.
Believe me, I've been down the hardwired road. I once tried to run Cat5 cable to every gate in my shop. I ended up with a tangled mess that looked like a spider on espresso had been living in my ceiling. The wireless stuff is robust now. You just program, they are on the same frequency, and they talk to each other. It's about as difficult as pairing a set of Bluetooth headphones, but with more sawdust.
Okay, let's talk about the physical ductwork. I've seen some shops with that beautiful, shiny, galvanized metal pipe, and others with that green PVC drain pipe. Is there a right way, or is this just another shop turf war like Waterstones versus sandpaper?
It's a bit of a holy war. Metal's great because it's fire resistant and it doesn't build up static. But man, it's expensive, and cutting those fittings is a great way to lose a finger to a jagged edge. PVC is cheap and easy to work with. It's like Legos for adults. But people worry about static shocks. I've had my arm hair stood on end by a PVC pipe more times than I care to admit.
I've heard those static shocks can actually start a fire. Is that a shop myth, or should I be worried about my dustbin turning into a rocket engine?
It's largely a myth for home shops. To get a dust explosion, you need a very specific concentration of dust and air, basically a fog of flour. Most of us aren't running industrial furniture factories, but a static pop into your hand when you're mid-cut on a table saw, that'll make you jump. And jumping while holding a piece of wood near a spinning blade is a recipe for a wasn't that a beautiful finger story. So if you go PVC, just run a grounded copper wire inside or around it to bleed off that charge.
What about tips for the difficult tools? Like a router table. Every time I use a router, it seems like half the wood disappears into a parallel dimension and the other half ends up in my hair.
Router tables are the devil's work for dust. You need 2 points of collection, you need a fence that sucks the shavings off the top, and a dust bucket underneath that catches the stuff falling through the plate. If you only do one, you're only solving half the problem. Johnny Brook used that Rockler dust bucket kit, and it's basically an airtight box that surrounds the router. It creates a vacuum chamber. It's the difference between sweeping a floor and power washing it.
And the table saw? I feel like the overarm collectors always get in my way. Are they worth the hassle of having a giant trunk hanging over the blade?
They're a nuisance until you cut a piece of MDF. Then they're a godsend. Most table saws have a 4-inch port in the cabinet, which catches about 70% of the mess. But that last 30%, the fine stuff the blade flings right back at your face, you need an overblade guard with suction. It's like a shark guard. It keeps your vision clear and your lungs empty of fine dust. It's a bit of an adjustment to work around, but once you get used to it, everything else feels like working in a coal mine.
I'm curious about the shop vac side. For a lot of people, they aren't going to buy a Clearview system tomorrow. Is there a way to make a humble vacuum actually perform?
You can put lipstick on a pig, Alex, but it's still a pig. However, you can give that pig a jetpack, add a small cyclone lid to a 5-gallon bucket, and put it in front of your shop vac. It'll trap 99% of the heavy chips before they ever reach your vacuum's tiny pleated filter. It keeps your suction high for way longer. And buy a HEPA filter, please. Standard filters are just dust recirculators.
It sounds like the automation part is really about removing the excuses. You're more likely to use the dust collection if you don't have to think about it.
That's the heart of it. A shop should be a place where you're in the flow. Every time you have to stop to move a hose, or find a remote, or walk across the room to open a gate, you're breaking that spell. You're no longer a maker, you're a janitor. My goal with the wiring and the IVAC system was to make the cleaning happen as part of the making.
So, what's the one mistake people make when they finally pull the trigger on a big system? The I wish I hadn't done that moment.
Using too many 90-degree elbows. People treat dust collection like plumbing for water. Water is under pressure. It'll go anywhere. Dust-laden air is lazy. If it hits a hard 90-degree corner, it loses half its speed and drops the dust right there. Use two 45-degree elbows with a little straight section in between to make a long sweep. It keeps the air moving fast. It's like the difference between a highway off-ramp and a brick wall.
Makes sense. Keep the flow going, both for the air and for the craftsman.
Exactly. And don't be afraid of the multimeter. Learning how your shop drinks power is the first step to making sure you don't end up sitting in the dark, wondering why your saw died mid-rip on a $200 slab of walnut.
I feel like there's a specific story there, but we might have to save that for the shop disasters episode.
Oh, that's a three-parter, Alex. For now, just remember, clean air isn't a luxury. It's the foundation of being able to do this craft for a long, long time. Get the dust before it gets you.
Well said. Next week, can we talk about why you have 17 different types of tape in your drawer?
Only 17, I must be running low.